right, let's get right to it. Who's familiar with quiet quitting? I want to talk to these two experts. You open up social media and you see in your face the great resignation, quiet quitting. Let's talk about that. Who wants to go first?
Sure. I think you see a lot of different definitions about what quiet quitting is, and what I'm seeing is people who aren't feeling valued in their work, and it's not a lack of motivation, it's a lack of personal connection that people are having, especially people who start off during COVID. They start off in a remote setting, they're not making connections to other people. They don't feel loved or valued by their senior leadership. And when another opportunity comes up, they're taking it. I think if you have a friend, a colleague, someone at work that you're connected with, you're less likely to make that move and that jump.
Absolutely. Kate, what do you think?
I agree. I think it's something, though, it's not a new phenomenon. I feel like quiet quitting has been going on forever. If you look in the corners of any big organization, you're going to find those people that have just been doing their job and they kind of don't, they're just doing it and they're going to do it until they hit retirement. But are they really the folks that you want working in your firm, right? Are they energized? Are they really engaged? Are they bringing something to the table? I think, quiet quitting is the new popular name, but I do think it's something that as leaders we all have to worry about, right? You can't go a day without hearing about the hiring crisis, recruiting, retaining people, which is even more difficult. So whether we call it quiet quitting or we think it's just something that's been going on, I think as leaders, the world as we knew it has been shifting, and the pandemic just accelerated all of that about where we do work, how we do work, how we engage with each other, and I think that's what we'll have a great conversation about.
Do you feel that working remotely has exacerbated that or caused that? Or, are butts in seats what's required to avoid or prevent or slow down the quiet quitting phenomenon or trend, or call it what you will? Do we need butts in seats? And I know that that's just a topic that's been debated back and forth, but we're the hybrid mentality, right? Half in, half out.
Right. I personally, I've been remote for 6 years. I do not agree with the butts and seats theory,
Butts in
if you
seats,
will.
people. Butts
But
in
yeah,
seats.
that's the new tagline for it. But yes, I do feel like remote work has led to this new phenomenon, and I think the increase of the social media engagement. You go on LinkedIn and you see people moving around, or you see people talking about the benefits or the culture that is at their company, and you think, wow, why am I still doing this? Why do I have all these requirements, and why don't I have any vacation days or flexibility or that work-life balance? So I do think the remote work that was thrust upon us has really started that questioning of people in themselves of what is my company doing or not doing that I value and I want to start doing moving forward. And they're looking for companies that have that alignment.
Yeah, I think.
Do you agree?
Well, I do. So I've been part of remote work for probably 15 years at various companies and at various levels, right? It could be one day a month, one day a week. But also, we always talk about it as you're in the office or you're at home, and I think we forget to think about distributed workforces. The last company I worked for, we were in probably 10 locations, plus people working from home. My boss and I were never even in 2 time zones together with each other for 10 years. We had a really close relationship, and it was through video, and it was through phone calls and travel sometimes and seeing each other. So I don't think you have to be in the seat. You have to be in the seat in your mind that you're doing your job. Where that is, I think we have learned we have to be flexible about. As we look to get more people into this profession, as we look to get more diversity into this profession, we've got to think through not just diversity of age and of gender and of lifestyle. We've got to start to look at where people are in their career, where they are in their life, what matters to them now. If you went back to school at age 30, do you really want to work 40 hours a week and then go to school on top of that and then take care of your kids and take care of your aging parents? Isn't there a way maybe you can work remote 2 days a week and maybe it's 35 hours a week, and doesn't that make you a better, more engaged employee? I will tell you, I had 6 or 7 working moms working for me at one of my last companies, and they worked all different hours, 9:30 to 11:30, stop, come back at 2:30, come back on at 7:30 at night. Like the work gets done. Not every job is that way. It depends on what it is, but we talked about this earlier.
Yeah, it's
Treat
the
people as adults,
Yeah.
and they're gonna get their job done.
Right. And I think it's meeting people where they are. And of course, that doesn't translate across every business and every group. There are traders. You have to work certain hours when the market's open. So it's not one size fits all, really. It's really based on your company, the different groups within it, and something that we do, which I really like, is it's up to senior leadership or it's up to the managers that work with their teams to figure out what's right for them specifically. And that's not going to be universal across the company. It's going to be unique to that group. Some people or certain teams, they might need that more in-office time or more face time. And then some don't. Some work individually, and they can set their own hours. And I think that flexibility is key.
Well, I find it interesting also that we are one of the few countries that have a school system of hours of 8 to 2, and we work normal business hours of 9 to 5. Like, who came up with that?
Yeah.
They don't match. So whether it's the dad or the mom or someone in between, that makes it very difficult for most adults to have any type of career work-life balance. Or so how do you manage that from a company's perspective, from a leadership perspective? How do companies look to offer flexibility, but you still have to strike that balance? And we have businesses to run, right? So
Yeah.
you need those individuals plugged in, but you want them to also have a work-life balance. But how do you continue that engagement and say, hey, we understand, we want to work with you, and create that cohesive environment and keep them engaged when you're working remotely? You're not in an office where you can have lunch and birthday Fridays or Fridays off.
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of really important points. And as you said, treat people like adults. Sometimes we think of management as micromanagement. I don't personally need to know if someone on my team is picking their child up from school. If their schedule's blocked off at that time, I know I can't meet with them during that time. So I think it's really allowing people to set their own schedule within certain parameters where business can still be conducted, but I don't need to know where you'll be during certain hours of the day. I just need to know that you are focused on your work, that you're getting everything done that you need to get done, and that when I log into Zoom, you're there. And if you have a conflict, it's all about communication. So I think that's one of the biggest key drivers in it is communication. You need to be open if you're in the office or you're in a remote setting, just setting those boundaries, and you really need to set that from the top down. If your senior leadership is taking 0 time off and working from 8 in the morning to 8 p.m. at night, you're setting a horrible example for everyone below you or around you. So I think setting expectations and then delivering on them at a leadership level.
I was chuckling a little bit. One of my positions, I was new to the position, and this woman that worked for me would walk by my office and go, LR. She'd walk by again and go, CB, LR. And I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, well, I'm letting you know I'm going to the ladies' room or a cigarette break. I don't care. I mean, like, you have a job. I am not your mother. You do not need to tell me these things. But as a leader, I need to know enough about you to care about you, to know that,
Right.
I know you've got kids. I know that you've got your schedule handled. One of my favorites is I had someone on my team had 5 kids. Well, she was pregnant with her 4th, and when I told my boss, he was like, oh my God, do you think she's going to come back to work? I'm like, what you don't even know is she has 3 kids at home already. Of course she's coming back to work. Who wants to be home with 4 kids? Mm-hmm. But she, it was just, it's about knowing what each employee leads. And I'm not going to pretend it's not easy,
Yeah.
right? Because you have to be fair to all your employees, and you can't say, oh, families with kids get to have Friday afternoons off for soccer practice, but people who only have pets have to come in. It's not easy to figure out, but I think the future of work is being leaders who care. You know, Emlyn, in the last session we were talking about this, it's showing that you care in ways so that your employees are going to do their best for you. If I know that you care, I care right back. And then I'm not going to be so like, well, I only want to work 30 hours a week, or I'm not coming in on Mondays or whatever. I want to do what's done. I'm all in. When I'm in, I'm all in. And I think you get that loyalty from people, but you've got to, it's a two-way street. I
Yeah.
think as leaders, it's not so cut and dry. We're not going to, we can't just fill out like, here's your performance review, check, 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 check. You have to have the conversations with people. What is it that is keeping you concerned about coming to this job every day? What is it that might make you go to another job? Because there's so many different personas at work right now. It's not always money. It might be the flexibility to take your mother to doctor's appointments or to take your pet to the vet.
So let's talk about that. What is important? What's important today? Is it money? Because I hear a lot of employers that say we can't find good talent. The talent pool has dried up.
Yeah.
What are we looking for here, people? Like, what are we not offering, or why can't we retain good talent? Which could be a very separate topic. But let's talk first about part one. What's missing? What do we need to be offering to get good talent?
I'm just going to say it's not one size fits all. And that's what we're offering, the traditional benefits of here's more money, here's more vacation time. Come on, doesn't that make you want to come to work? No. Some people want more flexibility. Some people want that. Look, I'm at a point in my career, some people think it's not the first thing in my life. It's there and I want to do my job, but maybe I job share. Maybe you give me the flexibility to work 3 days a week and I share a job with someone else who works 2 days a week. I mean, there are so many different things. It's just the not cookie cutter.
And I completely agree with that, but I think it all stems from culture. I think people are really paying attention to a company's culture because on paper we can say, oh, we've got the greatest benefits. We have a flexible schedule, and then you come in, and that's not the case.
It's a setup.
Yeah, you're set up. There's more research going into it. You're really thinking about yourself as the employee going in and the lifestyle that's going to create for you. So, money's great. And I think, yes, that's absolutely prevalent right now. Everyone is having to pay more for employees. But I think really during the interview process, setting the tone for your company's culture and involving this potential candidate in that process and giving them a preview of it as you go through the interview is really important. I think that's going to be a key differentiator when you're finding candidates.
This goes really far, but I was reading a McKinsey study that said even in the interview process, you should ask the interviewee how they want to be. Do they want to be interviewed remotely? Do they want to come into the office? Do they want to have 3 interviews? I don't know, that may be going a little far, but it's look, it's all transparent now. Don't think that anyone's getting an interview and not going on Glassdoor and looking up your company and finding out through LinkedIn, everyone they know that works there, and finding out what the real scoop is. Your culture may look great on the plaque in your entryway, but what really happens?
Yeah.
What does happen? So what do leaders need to do to create that culture, to keep their staff comfortable, to be able to talk to you and say, hey, this is an issue for me. I need to be able to work. I need a flexible schedule. The workload you're putting on me is a lot, and I can't handle it. If you're working remotely, it's different. I could go knock on my manager's door if I'm in an office, but if you're working remotely, how do you do that? You send an email and say, hey, I'm you're getting on my nerves. Can we talk? How do you handle that?
I really think there's a blurred line there, because if you don't have a relationship with your manager, it doesn't matter if you're in the office next door to them or a Zoom or Slack away. If you don't have that trust built, then I think you're already at a loss there. So I think leading from the top down with creating that environment for your colleagues to be able to trust you enough to come to you with issues or feel comfortable enough. I think leading with example and kindness that you put through. One of the things that I think is almost free, very easy to do. Learn about your employees. When's their birthday? When is their anniversary? If they mention to you that their grandmother is sick in the hospital, send them a card. Go to the dollar store. I mean, there are really, really small touch points that you can do that make a difference in the employee's life and makes them feel not only valued, but part of like a culture and a family.
What do you
And
think,
from
Kate?
a leadership perspective, practice bottoms up leadership too, right? Don't always be the one directing what happens. One great way to get to know the people on your team is to hear from them. They're usually closest to the work. They're the ones that know how to make improvements much more than you do. You're going to probably just get in the way of the process. But you can start to see high performers. You can see how people think and how they reason, and that just starts to form that relationship. They're honored to show their work to you. They start to trust you. That's how that two-way street starts. But leaders can't just think that they sit in the We've gone, so we went to the, away from the offices, right? We went to open concept probably right before the pandemic, a lot of us. It doesn't mean that just because a leader's sitting out on the floor that they're any closer to their employees. So don't mistake a lack of walls for being, someone that your associates can talk to. You've got to be really intentional about it, and whether that's you working with your communications department or your HR teams or someone to, what are there activities that you can do together? It's fun and games, but it does help. It doesn't always have to be drinks at the bar.
I mean, I enjoy drinks at
Right.
the
I
bar.
was gonna
I
say,
don't,
not
I
a-
don't find
Clear,
fundamentally
to be
that
clear.
there's
horrible
anything
idea.
wrong with that, but
Can be.
it's a matter of opinion, right? It's added to the benefit plan. Thank you, Kate. So, what do you feel is the most important part of when you're asking in your top 3 questions in an interview? And I know I'm going a little bit rogue, but I know that you can catch up. What do you ask to get that talent that you're looking for, right? Because we're talking about culture, fit, right person. You want that, and again, we're not in an office. So if this person's going to be in Tennessee and then somebody else is in Dubai, time difference, and as a leader, you want all of us to get along. We have a business to run. What questions are you going to ask to get that person onboarded properly? Because one of us, I think it was you, Kelsey, that mentioned, if you're hiring the right people. How do you make that happen to the best of your ability? Right? We don't
Yeah.
have a crystal ball. We don't.
Right.
We don't.
And I think once it gets to me, hopefully, the person is already qualified, the candidate that's getting in front of me. So it's really something that you're trying to determine is, are they not only the right cultural fit, but are we the right culture for this person? So it's really nice to say, I want that flexibility, that transparency, I want remote work. But if that might not be what you actually need or want. So sort of getting to the root of, how do you expect to interact with me and your team? How do you hope to have in-person events, and really getting to the core of their expectations, because it might not be aligned with the job that they even applied for.
Yeah, I think it's important to ask, right? What is
You're,
what are those expectations? How do you want to work with me? When I say, when you say you want flexibility, what does that look like for you? Because I'll tell you what flexibility looks like here, and let's make sure they're a match. I also like to ask people, how do they like to be recognized? Some people want to be up on stage and they want to medal and they want everyone to clap for them. Other people just want to know, I want to know that you know that I did a job, and then give me a really fat raise, or whatever that looks like. So I think it's important to really understand what is driving folks and make sure you're on the same page. We all use these same words, flexibility, pay, benefits, but we can all think different things about that.
and everyone's definition of fat raise is different, right?
Exactly.
My definition of fat might be very different than yours. When come direct deposit time, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about something interesting we chatted about earlier, the metaverse. Kelsey, I am putting the spotlight on you because you all had a trial run with that. Let's talk about what that looked like, and you getting your team together. What sparked that? And I think that a lot of us are going to follow suit.
I think something that's really hard to recreate virtually is an in-person experience. We have a annual company-wide team building event. And if you've been with our company for a long time, you're used to that being really fun. It is filled with excitement and different games and the drinks and the happy hour so
The
it's
happy hour.
very difficult to recreate that and to try and think of how do we create engagement and interaction across the country of people. And one thing that we tried last year was in the metaverse. So a team building game. You created an avatar, which was really my favorite part, I think. And you went through a whole game system and you met up at the end in this big open park of just virtual people that are all your colleagues. And if you walked up to interact with them, their actual face and video popped up on the screen so you can talk to them and then go on to the next person. So I think that we will see that going forward. We're going to have meetings in the metaverse or these sort of cultural events that we can't recreate in person going forward.
Is that a replacement for in person?
I think it's another option. I don't think it's a replacement completely for that in-person team building. What we're finding at our company is the in-person needs to be surrounded with fun. That's the best way that we get the engagement out of it. No one wants to join together and have a brainstorming meeting. You're not going to get the highest value there. I think it's in addition to in-person solutions. And of course, if you have we're virtual first, if you have a team spread across the country, it's very expensive to do multiple in-person events across the year. So I think it's in addition to some type of in-person meetups that you do.
Kate, what do you think?
Well, I've never been as cool to do anything in the metaverse. I want to maybe think about trying that. But it also makes me think of, if you all remember back to like 2010 when all of a sudden all conferences were virtual and we had those things and conferences didn't go away. So I think that, I think all conferences should be like this from now on. I think Future Proof
Right.
just rocked it. But I think that I think there's a place for that, right? And I think the metaverse is a really cool place to do it. Like I've done the awkward, like, let's have a Christmas party over Zoom. And it's like,
Oh.
okay, like, even when we were back, this is before the pandemic, like people all over the country and we weren't going to travel and you put people on video and it's fun, but it's not. So I think the metaverse is something cool to try, but I don't think anything takes place of the face-to-face, the like this. I'm sorry, we're here in person. That's so important to really get to know people, and then it helps build on. Once you meet people in person, then it's the building on that virtually can be done and Zoom and all of that.
So virtual happy hours don't help with engagement? Again, I'm focused a lot about happy hour. I don't mean
Well,
it. No
it's
judgment
five,
here,
you know,
people.
it's that time.
Just right, 4 o'clock. I appreciate you all being here.
We have done one virtual happy hour where you were sent drinks and you made them together. That's the only one I attended. I think any forced happiness, virtually or in person, is not the best way to get engagement.
So what does the future of work look like? You're asking companies to essentially close offices and reallocate funds. What are we doing with those funds? What's that going to look like?
Well, I think we talked about in the beginning. It's not going to be one size fits all. It depends on how big your team is, how dispersed your team is, what business you're in. I think it would be a shame if you looked at another company and tried to recreate the culture and the virtual experience that they're doing. I think you really need to look at your employees and the value system that you have there and what you want to recreate going forward. But it's going to be a lot of trial and error. And it's going to need to continue build. You're not going to come up with your future of work solution today and be able to continue it for the next 20 years. You have to continually evolve.
I think they're heavily focused and relying on us to come up with a solution today, Kelsey. So,
Oh, perfect.
Kate.
So, I agree with Kelsey, everything that she said, and it's asking in a frequent basis, what does that future look like? What is the perfect, no one wants to hear me. What does that perfect office look like? Is it an office? It's gonna be a mix of both. You know, there are some Wall Street companies that maybe they're saying everyone's going back, but they're not. I mean, the traders are going back. They need the high frequency trading. If we want truly, not even if we want, forget if we want, right?
We
The,
want.
the, the world is changing. We're so much more diverse. We have so much more diversity of thought and of age and of experiences. No one is coming back to the office to sit behind a desk 8 to 5 and collect their paycheck. I'm sorry, that's just not the way that it is. There are jobs that have to do that, but everyone needs to have that flexibility. That's not going away. We had it in bits and pieces before the pandemic. Now that we've seen it, we, again, as leaders, have to get smarter about how do we engage those teams. Is it more in person? Do we take the budget money from the expansions of our offices and do more offsites? I vote them all here.
I'm with
There
you.
is that, right? I mean, I've worked at companies where we spend a lot of time traveling. There's good and bad to that, right? It's the wear and tear on your associates, but also there is nothing like brainstorming in person and having that meeting. But if it can't be, it's just the people skills of learning, all of us learning how to, right? If you're, younger than 40, you have literally started all your relationships online, right? You talk on FaceTime. It's not even a big deal. We just have to all get better and smarter at being able to just have relationships with people and talk to them no matter where they are.
So, is there a particular technology that you feel helps with the increased communication or consistent communication, or
Whatever one the leaders can manage to use.
well, I mean, you're asking a lot here.
We've
but,
used Slack for many years, and I personally think it's a great tool. You can set up quick Zoom meetings from it, and it's almost like instant messenger from back in the day. You can create teams and conversations with it. So we've found it really successful.
How do you show appreciation though remotely?
We use a system of fool's gold. So we're able to give people virtual appreciation that translates into actual money or gift cards or dollars. So it's a public, company-wide public setting where we give other people gold to show appreciation for it. You can in your reset monthly, so it's a public forum, and we're able to do that. And we've done that pre and post pandemic, so that's been really successful for us.
I asked that question because I think a lot of companies struggle.
Yeah.
With we know the who and the how, but we don't know the what. So, what else is there? What can we do other than the thank yous and the nice messages? And I love that the fool's gold. I love the name, but can't. Kate, what about you? What do you?
I mean, similar, right? There's online, systems that can do the cards, that can do that. It allows the employee to tell you how do they want to be recognized, how often, when. There was a system, and I'm not going to remember the name of it, that we used where if there was a recognition, it wasn't just from your boss. Everyone in the company could send you a card electronically. And how cool is it if you've been at the company 25 years and all of a sudden you turn around and you've got 150 cards, some of them from people you didn't even know. Like that's as cool as standing up at a town hall and having everyone clapping for you. I think it's even better. People are actually taking the time to say something to you. So I think new methods of recognition outstrip the old in many ways.
Do you think that that's is that impersonal? Is it personal? Do people, is it something they get excited about for the short term and then it kind of dies off? Because I'll tell you from personal experience, we try different ways, and one of them, we have a thank you channel on Slack. We have a couple different ones, but I'll just mention the thank you channel, and when we first launched it, everyone was in using it, but then we get busy, right? And we forget, and there's about 10 more channels created, and so it's not a lack of desire. It's more you put your nose to the ground, you're working, and I forgot that was there. So how does the team work together, and you continuously create that culture of, recognition is for everyone. It's not just from the top down.
Yeah, I think that probably, if we think back to our first topic of quiet quitting, if you're not being recognized by your colleagues and by your mentors or by your bosses, that's certainly a way that you can lose like your value with the company you're working for. So I think from leadership to encourage their managers and other employees and keep it on a consistent basis. Write a note. If you had a meeting with someone and they helped you out, give thanks to them. I think just having that constantly on the forefront for you. Set a calendar reminder for you every day, every week, every month to go in and put those accolades through Fool's Gold or whatever system that you use through a thank you channel. But just to make sure personally that you keep up and are consistent with it, because that's how people feel valued. So I don't think it's also a one size fits all, because there are going to be people who like the announcements of thanks, and then there are some employees that really would prefer that personal note, or you taking them aside or giving them a call and saying, wow, you did a really great job. So I think it's knowing your employees and how they like to be thanked is really important.
And also keeping the culture of recognition alive. You're right, right? We all get busy and it's hard to remember. So keeping that as a piece of the culture so that it's celebrated all the time. There's always a room for recognition, whether it's a formal corporate program where you can nominate your peers for little projects, big projects that culminate in maybe, you know, a big award or a trip or a gala event. But when you create that culture where everyone is remembering to do it because you're seeing it, you're seeing the leaders do it, then you're like, oh yeah, you know what, I should do that. And reminders, you know, I used to just set a reminder every Friday afternoon. Who do I need to recognize this week? Whether it's, you know, anniversary or people that helped. But you have to be intentional about all of this, and from the leadership down. If the more that leaders talk about it, the more that it shows up on your Slack channels, your intranets, whatever. I think people will adopt that behavior.
Can we talk about PTO for a second? So I've had some conversations with other like HR leaders and managers and CEOs, and they've established a culture and benefits, and part of their benefit package is unlimited PTO. I'm like, what does that even mean?
Scares the hell out of me.
Right? So I need to understand what does that mean to you? I think Kelsey, you and we had talked to another colleague that couldn't be with us today, but what does that mean? And what does that mean for the team or the business? And how
Right.
do you get anything done?
Well, we have unlimited time off, vacation, sick, and I think that really bleeds into the we're all adults, work and get your job done when you can. So if you're sick, don't work. If you need a mental break, maybe that means a day or two for you, or maybe that means you need to take a few week blocks off of a year. And I think micromanaging sort of how much time each person needs, or how much time they're taking, it really isn't the culture that you should be creating. I think that if you see your employees are getting their job done, they're highly engaged, their productivity is high, then that's really what should matter, and it shouldn't be the amount of days that they took off in a year. I think the real problem is when you get into that unlimited vacation policy is making sure that people actually take it.
Yeah.
So when there's no limits around it and it's not tracked in any way, people can really fall through the cracks of just constantly working. So I think setting that example of making sure that at the leadership level that you're taking time off and you're noticing that of your colleagues and your teammates, hey, you haven't had a break in a while, why don't you take some time off, and trying to set that standard is really important. So I think it's more about making sure people take enough leave and not so much people taking advantage of that system.
And letting them take the time, right? Like showcasing, and you know, when you as the leader go on vacation, don't keep sending emails
Yeah.
because then they feel like they can't be on vacation. You know, obviously there's going to be issues where you have to, but minimize that. Let people know that vacation is for rejuvenation.
Right. So do you think that there needs to be a layer in between leadership, like an HR person or a people representative, a people operations person that you could go to as a team member, as an employee, when you want to take off, but you just don't know how to ask or want to ask? Or does that I know it boils down to culture, but sometimes it really is also you can't get a hold of your leadership team, right? So does that create a better environment if you have a go-to person?
I think you've got some serious problems if you can't get a hold of anyone on your leadership team for a given time period of
Okay.
trying to take off, or if you're being not answered for any vacation leave. I think it's
Agreed.
w- the framework that you need to set it of this is when I'll be taking off. I'm blocking off my schedule during this time. I want to make you aware. Please let me know if you see any issues with that or conflicts. And that should be the conversation. It shouldn't be the fear of going to your boss or going to HR and trying to have several conversations of, hey, I need to take some time off. And it needs to be way more organic than that. And that's, I think, a big problem if you need to have any type of buffer or middleman. I think you just really need to set the standard of your time is your time, and take it as you please, as long as you have the coverage or whatever it is that you need for your specific role.
Do you feel like you need to pay people less if they're working less? Meaning that if you're saying flexible work hours, and Kate had mentioned earlier a 35-hour work week, I've had some leadership teams that have said that's not effective. We're not getting the work done. And I need short answers because apparently we've run to our time. We talk too much about this topic. So let's close with that. One final thought.
Kate, you go ahead.
About that question or just
Yes,
anything?
yeah,
I
yes.
mean, I think, yeah, you have to look at the output, right? But are you getting out of 35 hours what you thought you were getting out of 40? 35 hours of focused time beats 40 hours of unfocused or just, you know, I'm not sure that you have to. You have to look at what it is you're trying to get. Are you producing? And it's not necessarily that.
Yeah, I think, is the job getting done at 35 hours? Then yes, they're still in that same scope of their role, so they should be paid the same. Do you need to supplement someone else's role to cover that last 5 hours of productivity? Then maybe this person needs to consider going to part-time, and you need to fill the rest of the gap if that's what's appropriate for them. So it's, again, not one size fits all. It just depends on the role and if it's being completed in that work week or not.
Agreed. Well, we didn't solve world hunger today, and I don't think we solved the problem of future of work, but hopefully that was helpful to give you some ideas of what to implement. Hybrid, remote, everything in between. This is just a fun topic, and I think that you all love your teams enough to at least put some thought into what you're doing next. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.